morning, everybody. Well, I had a feeling that the middle of June was the time when politics was going to hot up with key votes in the House of Commons, and so I decided that last week was probably a very good one to take off on the basis that it could be politically a very long, hot summer. But I have to say that what I come back to this morning here at LBC is Brexit at fever pitch. We've got the Tory party at war. We've got threats of resignations from cabinet ministers. We've got key votes coming up on Tuesday that nobody can quite call. We have now appeals this morning from Amber Rudd and Ian Duncan Smith for unity within the party. We have Monsieur Barnier looking ever more confident, saying backstop means backstop, now virtually openly mocking the British Prime Minister. And, of course, today, a major Russian expose about Aaron Banks and Andy Wigmore with, of course, my photograph plastered alongside theirs. Tuesday could be huge because not only are we going to have these votes in Parliament, but Aaron Banks has said he will appear before the Department of Culture, Media and Sport Committee, and that could be pretty explosive. And the question I want to ask you this morning is, does Brexit still mean Brexit? And if you think, yep, it's all actually going fine, we should have expected, as Michael Howard said the other day, these thrills and spills along the way. But if you're happy with the way it's going, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, do you know what, actually, not just concessions, but she's continually kicking the can down the road. Are we actually going to get a Brexit that is meaningful? And if that's how you feel, text to 84850. Or maybe you think, actually, Article 50 is going to get suspended. We're not actually leaving. We're facing a major constitutional crisis. And you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And, of course, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And later on in the show, we will have Lord Adonis coming into the studio, one of the key proponents behind the amendments in the House of Lords to the European Union withdrawal bill that come back to the Commons on Tuesday, and an ardent Remainer. And we will also have John Longworth from Leave Means Leave, somebody who gave up quite a high-profile position in business during the referendum campaign, and who I think is less than gruntled by the way that Mrs May is handling these negotiations. Well, my take on the last few days, and perhaps where we're going, is that the Tory party effectively has been at war over this issue ever since about 1972, ever since Edward Heath and Enoch Powell fell out dramatically, not just on immigration, but actually on entry to the common market. And we have a cabinet under Mrs May, 2/3 of whom are not just Remain voters, but still, I think, in their hearts would rather something rather different was done. So the fact there's a split in the Tory party is no surprise. What perhaps did surprise people was the David Davis threat of resignation with possibly two other colleagues alongside him. And his reason was that the so-called backstop, and this is what Mrs May conceded to just before Christmas. Do you remember when she left Downing Street at 4:15 in the morning to fly across to meet Monsieur Barnier? I mean, I said at the time, can you imagine any other British Prime Minister having to leave Downing Street in the dead of night to go and meet an unelected bureaucrat because the bureaucrat had a deadline? But she agreed to a backstop position, and that backstop position was us effectively staying part of the customs union single market. And David Davis was worried, was there any time limitation put on this? He was reassured by Number 10 that indeed there was to be a time limitation, and that's until Monsieur Barnier took the stage and he was asked, is there any time limitation? A Gallic shrug of the shoulders, and a backstop means backstop, which I think he means thinks it should be there forever. Trouble is, Monsieur Barnier says this only applies to Northern Ireland and not the rest of the UK. So once again, we see Barnier using Northern Ireland, using this, I think it's a deliberate attempt, actually, to split the United Kingdom, and really pushing Theresa May into a position that is almost impossible. And with every concession she makes, she's almost got herself, in some ways, into a checkmate position, and she's played herself there. Tuesday, we have these 15 amendments coming back to the House of Commons. A couple of those are really, really vital. One, whether Parliament ultimately will have a meaningful veto on anything that the government negotiates, and secondly, a vote on whether we should stay part of the customs union. And they are votes that, indeed, if the Prime Minister were to lose on Tuesday, I think we probably would see on Wednesday a motion of confidence debate in the House of Commons on the survival of this government. My own hunch at the moment is that they will get through, but we'll ask Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, how he feels about that in a moment. And a call for unity this morning, and unbelievably, Amber Rudd and Ian Duncan-Smith team up together and say, put the party first. You know, just the same thing as I heard 25 years ago at Maastricht, when it was the sceptics they were appealing to. This time it's the ardent Remainers that are being appealed to. But I think even Amber Rudd knows that basically they need to deliver Brexit. But whether it's a Brexit that's recognisable to Brexit voters is perhaps a separate question. And dramatically, this morning, we see all over the newspapers stories about Arron Banks and Andy Wigmore and how many times they did or did not meet the Russian ambassador. I knew they'd gone to meet the Russian ambassador once for lunch at his Kensington residence. I know that because they invited me to go along, and I said no, I did not want to do that. I didn't realise they met him subsequently, and I certainly had no knowledge of any potential gold mining contracts in Siberia or elsewhere. Yes, of course, a lot of people will say, well, there were links between the Russians and Arron Banks. Well, of course there were. He's married to a Russian. That wouldn't be very surprising. But there's nothing I can see in these newspapers that suggests for one moment that anything Arron Banks has done with Russians had any influence over the referendum whatsoever. And similarly, you know, when Banks says that he's briefed the American intelligence services on his links with the Russians, and equally he says he gave a phone number to the Russian ambassador for one of Trump's transition team. Again, all of this happened after Donald Trump was elected. So whatever you do or don't think about Arron Banks' business transactions, I don't see how any of these stories make any difference to those two major events. So, does Brexit still mean Brexit? Well, my hunch, as I said earlier, I think those votes will pass on Tuesday. I still believe that we will leave at 11 p.m. on March the 29th next year. I'm just worried that the can is being kicked so far down the road that it will not be, for many, many years, any kind of Brexit that is recognisable. I'm going to ask Charlotte in the Forest of Dean whether she thinks Brexit still means Brexit. Good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you.
Good to speak to you. So, how do you feel?
Well, basically, I've believed for a long time that she was going to water down Brexit to the point where it was irrelevant. I've always believed that she was just a continuation from David Cameron, who didn't want Brexit either, but resigned, and the baton got passed to her. It took her a long time to trigger Article 50, and since then we've had nothing but stalling, more elections, more stalling, more batting about between us and Brussels, and more concessions. And these are concessions that we did not agree to, because what we said on the paper is, do you want to leave the European Union or do you want to remain in the European Union? And we want to leave, and I don't want any concessions. I don't want them to pay them any money. I definitely do not want a transition period, because that is not what me and 17.4 million people voted for.
Well, Charlotte, you know what? I honestly think there are 17.4 million people, and maybe a lot more than that, who are desperate for some clear leadership from Mrs May. And they're not getting it, Charlotte, are they?
Well, no, but then she's not really a leader, is she? Let's be honest. I mean, she's worse than Gordon Brown, and that is saying an awful lot. I mean, she really is. She's the worst leader we've ever had. And the Conservatives, as they stand to me, are blue Labour, because a lot of them, given a few, they're all just like, you know, they're just like blue Labour. They believe in all the things that the other parties believe in, like open borders and things like that.
I'm laughing, Charlotte.
These are the things that we don't want.
I'm laughing, Charlotte, at your comment about she's the worst leader we've ever had, because last night I was speaking to to a cabinet minister during John Major's period and served right through John Major's term. And I said to him, isn't she the worst leader we've had in our lifetimes? He said, oh, Nigel, there's pretty stiff competition. He said, but on balance, you're probably right. There is talk, Charlotte. There is talk that David Davis threatening to wield the knife. Boris Johnson being recorded saying that Donald Trump would make a better job of the negotiations than Theresa May. And by the way, I agree with him. There is talk that maybe she gets this vote through on Tuesday and then they oust her as leader. Do you believe that'll happen?
Well, the thing is, they've been saying it for a long time, but talk's cheap, as we know, and we need to see some action. But to me, there are very few what I call true conservatives within the Conservative Party.
Well,
and basically what we're going to get, if they oust her and she's useless, I mean, it won't stop them bringing in yet another useless individual who will wibble about and do nothing.
And it would all take 3 months.
I don't trust Gove.
It would all take 3 months, Charlotte, and that basically would be the rest of our negotiating time under Article 50. Charlotte, thank you for your call. And Charlotte is not alone. There are millions of Charlottes out there who voted Brexit and don't think they're getting it. Gosh, I'm one of them too. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's now 10:15.
LBC at the weekend. Andrew Castle.
Do not say that an identity of a country, the culture of a country, the fabric of a society is not affected by those coming. Their neighbourhoods have changed, their towns have changed, and they really don't like the way they've been denied a voice in this without being labelled.
Leading Britain's conversation. Andrew Castle. Today from 3 on LBC.
Hello, sir. So you're interested in our Vivaro van with up to
4 years warranty.
Exactly. Plus up to
4 years servicing.
Right again. And 4 years 0% APR finance with Vauxhall Help to Buy.
Really?
Search Vauxhall Vivaro. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Conditional sale. 4 years 0% APR. Minimum 18% deposit plus VAT at 20% on total price. Financed by Vauxhall Finance subject to status. 18 plus. Business users only. T's and C's, mileage limitations and exclusions apply.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious? Adventurous? Somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
Vision Consulting Chartered Accountants have seen astonishing growth over the years. So now, their ever-expanding client base means they're looking for remarkable people to join the Vision Consulting team in all areas of the business. In particular, they have immediate start vacancies for senior tax directors and payroll clerks. But they'd love to hear from anyone with a proven track record in accountancy. For a bright new future, visit visionconsulting.co.uk and apply today.
At Boots Opticians, we're here to help you discover a stylish new look for less. We've got thousands of frames to choose from, so speak to us and together we'll find the perfect pair for you. In fact, with 2 pairs from £75, why stop at just one? Book in store or at boots.com. Boots, let's feel good. 2 for £75 on Boots £50 glasses as part of our half-price additional pairs offer. Both pairs must be bought for the same customer in the same transaction, subject to availability. See in store.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Mo.
Was your house built slap bang in the middle of Mo Farah's daily running route? No? Great! Then why not use Yopa to sell your home? You get your own dedicated local estate agent who'll sell your home in no time at all. Ha, see what I did there, Mo?
Yeah, good one.
You're most welcome. That's not as good. Book a free home valuation at yopa.co.uk. Yopa. Seriously, why not? Terms apply.
The best place for sleepyheads is in a Bridge bedding bed.
At Bridge Bedding, we have hundreds of beds and mattresses in stock from the biggest brands in the UK. We'll beat any price on a like-for-like basis and we'll deliver for free. So before you buy your next new bed, visit a Bridge Bedding Centre, Rectory Grovely-on-Sea, Upminster Road, Hornchurch, or online at bridgebedding.com.
The best place for sleepyheads is in a Bridge bedding bed.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, John in Sydenham says, good morning, Nigel. For any Tory Brexiteer to call for support for Theresa May, because not to do so would cause an election, is surely putting political party before country. Well, John, I have to tell you, I sat and watched those Maastricht debates back in 1993 through the month of July, and I was willing the Brexiteers, early Brexiteers, anti-marketeers, perhaps they were called in those days, I was willing them on to defy the party line and to do what I thought was right for the country. But in the end, they decided to put loyalty to the party first, and that really is what propelled me into being a founder member of UKIP, and then 25 years of my life went by. But there is a feeling, John, at some point, and whether this is the moment, this week or not, but at some point, those who really believe in Brexit must stand up and say so. But I think John really is referring to Ian Duncan-Smith here. And Ian, a joint article in the Sunday Telegraph with Amber Rudd saying, come on, let's unify, let's get this vote through. Well, Tuesday is promising to be a huge, huge day in Westminster. Firstly, the committee meeting that'll take place earlier in the day, where Aaron Banks and Andy Wigmore will appear before the Department of Culture, Media and Sport Committee, and that could be pretty explosive, because Aaron, whether you like him or not, never holds back on what he has to say. And then, of course, the votes that I understand are going to go on all through Tuesday night. To explain this to us and to point out the two crucial votes, I'm joined by Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Good morning, Theo.
A very good morning, Nigel. It's actually now going to be split over 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, because the feeling was the government wasn't giving enough time for the consideration of 15 Lords' amendments. If I could quickly run you through 2 or 3 of the really important ones. I think the customs union one is important. Now, in reality, it is only calling on the government to come back with a new plan to lay out what it wants to do about the customs union. But the danger is for Theresa May that this becomes an issue about confidence in her. That if the House of Commons overwhelmingly says actually it wants to remain within the customs union by voting for this amendment, and Theresa May says actually she wants to take Britain out of the customs union, does her premiership become tenable? And that's the real danger for Theresa May. If she can somehow find an amendment to the amendment, a compromise with her own side that enables her to say, okay, well, look, I'll come back, I'll give you a bit of this, and I'll come back with some sort of plan, and is able to see it off early on, probably tomorrow or in the morning of Tuesday, then there may be a way around it. The other one that I think is significant is the amendment which would in effect force the government to go back to Brussels if Parliament rejects the final deal, because at the moment the government is in this standoff where it says to Parliament, if you reject the final deal, well, we're going to revert to the so-called no-deal Brexit, fall out of the European Union on World Trade Organisation terms. In effect, this amendment would keep Britain in the European Union in perpetuity, because Parliament could keep on saying, well, actually, we don't think we should do this, and we go back to Brussels, and Michel Barnier and Jean-Claude Juncker would say, well, we can't agree on this, and you could end up in this never-ending cycle of back and forth between Westminster and Brussels, that would keep Britain in the European Union. The final amendment, which actually I personally think was the most significant amendment, was seen off by Jeremy Corbyn on Wednesday when he came out and he said he wanted the softest of Brexits possible, but by keeping Britain with full access to the single market, but retaining curbs on the free movement of people. An impossibility, according to Michel Barnier and Jean-Claude Juncker. But what it did, crucially, Nigel, was it meant that by having to vote for that amendment, that Labour amendment, MPs would automatically abstain on the crucial amendment to keep Britain in the European Economic Area, the so-called Norway option, and that would have killed Brexit off right there and then on Tuesday. And that's not going to happen because of Jeremy Corbyn. Of course, Theresa May, and on those very soft.
Theo, on those the first two crucial amendments that you talked about, I mean, where's your money? Does she win or not?
At the moment, I think the customs union is the real danger, and I think she could find a way through it. But if she doesn't find a way through it, and if she doesn't come up with a compromise with the likes of Dominic Grieve, Nicky Morgan, Anna Soubry, Labour support it with those Tory rebels, then there's a real danger that the narrative starts to become about whether she has the authority to lead Parliament through the remainder of Brexit, and that's the real danger. The other one, it's very close, and the numbers are really close, and it's coming down to 12 or so Conservative MPs. But at the moment, what's really important in this is that Labour are holding firm. And if Labour hold firm on this particular issue, and decide that they can form an alliance with Conservative rebels, then the Prime Minister is in trouble. Hence the article from Ian Duncan Smith.
There are some Labour rebels too, aren't there? One thinks of the Kate Hoes of this world, the John Manns of this world, Frank Field.
Absolutely. So that's also worth, and you're quite right to point that out, because of course it's not automatic. It's not automatic that Jeremy Corbyn can rustle up every single one of his MPs.
No.
The counter narrative to that, of course, is that Jeremy Corbyn and those around him see this as a way of a manoeuvre in which they can bring down the government, and that is a real danger.
No, a couple of big nights coming up this week. Theo, we'll talk again in the week. Well, that's Theo Usherwood's analysis. He's not putting his neck on the line either way. I think she's going to squeeze through, but I could be completely wrong. Chris on Facebook thinks the negotiations have been completely shambolic, shameful conduct by both the Lords and the civil servants, such as dear Ollie, who seems to be Theresa May's right-hand man. We need to walk now. Chris, part of the problem with this is that I don't think Monsieur Barnier ever thought there was any prospect of Theresa May walking away, and that is allowing him to walk all over us. That's what I think. What does Manjeet in Peterborough think? Good morning.
Nigel, first of all, nice to have you back, mate.
Thank you.
Especially after the kind words Mr. Campbell had to say to you about you last week. It was great.
It was quite fun, his daughter ringing him, wasn't it? Well, I was away for a week, Manjit, and I was in the Channel Islands for a couple of days, and then I was in North Cornwall for a couple of days. And do you know what I found in North Cornwall? I was meeting people down there, in the pubs and various other places I went, who were saying, do you know, we hadn't voted for years. Yeah. We went out and voted in that Brexit referendum, and if this doesn't get delivered, we'll never vote for anybody again.
Precisely. We are getting so delusioned with, because I had confidence in Theresa May, but now I think it's just stalling, obstacle, so, because Europe is not going to give us nothing. Whatever we want, they're going to put obstacles in the way. And I think what will happen is people will get so disillusioned, so disenchanted with it, they'll say, you know what, we'll stay as we are. And I think apathy is a real problem. I mean, the greatest...
Yes, I guess, Manjit, I think if I was a Remain voter, I'd be quite happy at the moment, because I'd be saying, well, actually, we're not really leaving, at least not for a very, very long time. But with leavers, you do wonder, do some of them just become apathetic and give up? Or does it actually engender anger in others?
Well, me, it's anger, and a lot of my friends, it's anger. And I'll tell you the other thing. The greatest card we had is our money. That's the only thing the EU worry about, 40 billion. Now, if they want 40 billion, we threw that card in straight away and said, there, you can have it. We should have hung on to that and said, you know what, we don't pay you a penny until we get a deal out of you. And if it's going to take 10 years, we'll pay you the 40 billion, and we'll spread it over 10 years.
Manjit, I suppose the government, if I was a government spokesman, which I doubt I ever will be, if I was I would say that they have said repeatedly, nothing agreed until everything's agreed, but the impression is that our 40 billion's there on the table. I agree with you. Manjit, lastly, do you think she's going to win this vote on Tuesday?
I hope so, because if it's an election, we are going to... She'll scrape through it, I think. But if it goes to a no confidence vote, I really don't know. But who else can replace her? I mean, they hate Boris. They hate Mr. Corbyn. The less said about him, the better, I think. Who else can take over?
Well, maybe Amber Rudd. I don't know. The trouble is, Manjit, that a leadership contest, there would not be anybody anointed. It would take 3 months to go through, by which time all our negotiating time has gone. I think if she wins this vote, I think she probably stays. What I'm praying for is if we see a different Theresa May who comes out fighting hard. Manjit, thank you. I'm going to go to Mark in Trafford in Greater Manchester. Hi, Mark.
Hi, good morning, Nigel. Thanks for taking my call.
Not a bit. So, what do you think?
I want to give Theresa May a bit of credit. As much as I've been totally disgusted with the whole negotiation, I think she has compromised with the EU with a multiple of issues, trying to get steps forward to get the negotiations progress, but every time she tries to make a step forward, they just hit her with a brick wall. And this Commons vote, I really think it's really important that once we get to this Commons vote, it's a massive crossroad for the country that we can go in multiple directions. And I think if we do get that vote and it does go through, she has to move aside and let someone with a more assertive voice and a more assertive position take charge of the government and the process.
So she sees us through this crucial vote, and then it's time to step aside, Mark, yeah?
Yeah, I think she has to. I think the good cop routine that she's been trying to play, it's not working with him. There's no mutual respect in these negotiations. The EU have completely disrespected her, the government and the British people. And I think that we do have to be more like the EU, become more assertive and have a bit more faith in ourselves.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. Well, Mark, praising Theresa May for her resilience, but saying, frankly, she's not quite the right person to lead. Maybe Donald Trump would do a better job. I don't know. I'm going to ask Lord Adonis that question in a moment. But first, it's the news with Thomas Watts.
North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has arrived in Singapore this morning ahead of Tuesday's historic summit with Donald Trump. It's Mr. Kim's first known visit to a capitalist city. The US president is due to arrive this afternoon. Mr. Trump's withdrawn his endorsement of the joint statement at the end of the G7 summit. After the Canadian Prime Minister gave a press conference after the talks, the president called him dishonest and weak over trade disagreements. Two senior Conservatives from opposing sides of the Brexit campaign have urged party unity ahead of a series of crunch votes this week. Amber Rudd and Ian Duncan-Smith have warned defeat could lead to the fall of the government. LBC weather, most places warm and sunny, heavy showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, a high of 26 degrees.
LBC travel in the centre of town. Whitehall is closed in both directions until 11 a.m. for a memorial event, and Abingdon Street and Millbank have both been closed now between Parliament Square and Lambeth Bridge. That's ahead of the 100 Years Votes for Women march. As a result, it's very slow on Victoria Embankment in both directions between Westminster Bridge and Embankment Station. Balham High Road remains closed in both directions near Balham Station because of an accident, and then Crystal Palace Annerley Hill is closed in both directions. That's near Crystal Palace Station Road because of an accident as well. LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler.
This is LBC.
An amazing kitchen, an amazing bathroom, an amazing hallway. At Amazing Tiles, our range of porcelain, ceramic and bespoke tiles can make any home amazing. Right now, buy 5 metres or more of plain tiles and get a third off the retail price. Visit our showroom and warehouse at Park Royal Road, London, or call 0208 83 84 900. Make your home amazing at amazingtiles.com.
When the beast from the east struck, snow fell, temperatures plummeted, and the country ground to a halt. But Swale Heating leapt into action. Over the week, we helped over 10,000 homes stay warm and safe. To find out more about our boiler installations and maintenance schemes, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Data protection laws are changing. Are you GDPR ready? At WG Office Supplies, we are here to help. We've got everything your company needs, so don't bin it, shred it with our range of Rexel shredders. And if you can't shred it, lock it with a wide choice of safes and security devices. For office interiors, print, design and office supplies, visit www.wgforbusiness.com today or text audit to 87007. That's audit to 87007. Everything your workplace needs to succeed.
You've had those damp patches on the walls for a while now. And like a lot of people, you do nothing. Even though it's a health risk and it's damaging your property. So get it sorted once and for all with London Damp Specialists. They offer a standard 30-year guarantee on all their work, and it's usually ready to paint in around 10 days. But best of all, they won't take any payment until your walls are completely dry. Search LondonDampSpecialists.com, where you only pay when it's dry.
There's only one way to take afternoon tea, with fresh scones, clotted cream, damson jam, and finger sandwiches. There's only one way to serve a Manhattan, with rye whiskey, sweet red vermouth, and Angostura bitters. And there's only one way to sail transatlantic, on the world's only ocean liner, Queen Mary 2. With a thrilling arrival past the Statue of Liberty into the city that never sleeps. Yes, there's only one way to sail transatlantic, yet so many possibilities on board. With Cunard.
Businesses do not like uncertainty, yet uncertainty is inevitable with Brexit looming.
Against this backdrop, only businesses that plan ahead and anticipate better will be able to weather the challenges and capitalise on opportunities. At Barnes Rofe, we'll help you get ready with detailed budgets and forecasts so that you're better equipped to deal with the uncertainties ahead. Get ready for a Brexit future. Call Barnes Rofe today. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for business.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
You remember, Brexit means Brexit. She stood up there strong at the Lancaster House speech in the general election. I thought, wow, goodness me, we've got a leader at last. But does Brexit still mean Brexit? I mean, is Brexit actually going to happen? And perhaps what happens on Tuesday in the House of Commons is going to be one of the very major stepping stones to answering that question. And once we answer that one, which I hope we do, we then have to ask what kind of Brexit is it actually going to be. And joining me to have a chat with me and take one or two of your calls is Lord Andrew Adonis, Labour peer and leading supporter of Open Britain, the George Soros-funded organisation. Tell me, Andrew, how many times have you met George Soros?
I've never met George Soros.
Haven't you?
No, this is a pure invention. Can I ask you, Nigel, how many times have you met the Russians?
Never.
So neither of us have ever met people.
No, but I'm not funded by the Russians. And what's interesting is that Open Britain, of course, is funded by George Soros, who is seen as a very dark and mysterious character. But
that's not true, actually. There are lots. There's a wide diversity of funders.
Is it? Well, we'll look forward. We'll look forward to seeing the declarations. Now, Andrew, one of the reasons that we've got this dramatic day coming up, and it won't just be Tuesday, it's being split over Tuesday and Wednesday now, is because on 15 occasions the House of Lords sent back the government's European Union withdrawal bill. Do you still think that the House of Lords acted responsibly in doing that?
The job of the House of Lords in our constitutional system is to ask the House of Commons to think again about big issues that matter to the country. We don't have a veto. That's ended long ago. We don't have an aristocracy and all that now. And it's up to the House of Commons to decide what it's going to do. So we have sent back to them proposals that we should stay in the single market, the customs union to protect our trade, that we shouldn't have government by decree in this country, which is what this bill proposes, to allow the government simply to impose post-Brexit regulations by decree, and that there should be a meaningful vote in Parliament in the event that there's not a deal. Now, these are perfectly sensible proposals which the House of Commons should think again on. Now, you obviously want the House of Commons to reject those, Nigel. That's your prerogative, but it's up to the House of Commons to decide what it's going to do. And the job of the House of Lords is to ask them to think again.
Andrew, what I really want is the express view of 17.4 million people to be respected, but people like you kind of don't really respect that, think they should have another vote, think they perhaps got it wrong.
You seem to think they should have another vote when we last met,
No,
Nigel.
I've never thought they should.
You were very keen on this idea. I thought there was a consensus was developing.
But what I feared was the political class, of whom you are a shining example,
and so are you, as a member of the European Parliament.
push this upon us. So let's suppose, let's just take two scenarios. Number one, she loses a couple of these key amendments. What happens then?
Nothing. If
Nothing.
she loses,
so we just forget the referendum result.
No, it does. It's these do not go to the referendum result. Issues about whether we stay in the single market or the customs union are completely separate. Because 2 years ago, as you well know, Nigel, there was no clear view as to whether we would stay in the single market or the customs union if we voted Brexit. So all these votes are perfectly compatible with.
Do you still not accept that people on my side of the referendum argument and your mates in Open Britain, every single leading player in that referendum said that a vote to leave is a vote to leave the single market and the customs union. You don't accept that?
No, because that was not true.
So David Cameron said it.
The Conservative Party manifesto, or before the referendum, said that in the event of us leaving the EU, we would stay in the single market. That was the manifesto of the Conservative Party, which is
but the point about
with
referendums,
the British people.
Referendums trump manifestos. Referendums are where the people make a decision. So, just going to ask this one more time. Do you still not accept that every single leading Leave campaigner and Remain campaigner said that a Leave vote would mean leaving both?
Boris Johnson said that we would be staying in the single market if we Brexited.
He said nothing of the kind. He said nothing of the kind.
I don't accept for a moment.
All right, fine. No, I tell you what, if you won't accept the truth, that's fine. That's fine. And what I'll do,
we dispute the truth.
After the show, what I'll do on lbc.co.uk is put up quotes from half a dozen of the leading figures from both sides.
Okay, I'll do the same.
I'd be delighted to see it, I really would, because because you'd be educating me. You really would.
Nigel, that's my great mission in life.
I'm very grateful, Andrew.
And my book, which I've just given you, is the anti-Brexit case. There's a lot in there that I hope you'll take note of.
When you look at Italy and what's just happened with a very Eurosceptic government being elected, when you look at the Hungarian elections, you look at the Austrian elections, you look at the fact that the AfD in Germany is now the second biggest party, you look at the fact the Swedish Democrats have now hit the lead and their general election is coming up in September, do you not understand that across the entire European continent, there are people saying that this European Union model doesn't work, has never actually been voted for, and no one's ever been asked whether they really want a United States of Europe. I mean, you're asking us effectively to go back into something that appears to be falling to pieces.
I think you're conflating two different things, Nigel. I was in Italy last week and had discussions with Italian politicians. There are virtually no Italian politicians, including in the populist parties that you like, who want to leave the European Union. The big issue in Italian politics at the moment is refugees. It's this big refugee issue that they've got with refugees coming from North Africa. Now, that has nothing to do directly with the EU. It's not to do with free movement of people, because that's within the EU. It's all to do with the policing.
It's to do with the EU's asylum policy. It's to do with Mrs. Merkel saying, please, everybody, you're all more than welcome, and Italy and Greece picking up the tab.
But if they weren't in the EU, Germany could still choose to take lots of migrants from North African countries. So that's not the issue. The issue for them...
And what about Hungary?
For them is
what about Hungary, when Viktor Orban says...
Orban doesn't want to leave the EU either. Indeed, Orban, I believe, has urged you to change your strategy to stay in the EU.
They are all
they're not in the same place as you at all.
They're on a collision course with the European Commission.
But they all want to stay in the EU. This is the crucial thing. You see, I understand. Of course I understand, because, I'm a politician like you, Nigel, and I spend a lot of time talking to people. There are big concerns about migration and refugees. But conflating those with being a member of the EU...
The big concern is
not to address the source of the problem
If you look at what was said in the Austrian, Italian, Hungarian, those three elections where Eurosceptic governments have been formed, there's one question that comes out of all of it, and it is, we wish to make our own laws in our own country and not be dictated to. But not
Andrew, one of those countries wants to leave the EU, Nigel. Come on, accept that. Not one of those countries wants to leave the EU, Not one of them.
They want to change it into something that it can't become. And when they fail...
They don't want to leave it, though. This is the key point. I'm in favour of improving the EU.
They will. But it can't be improved.
For example, I think the European Parliament should be improved a lot. I think people should actually turn up who are elected to it and vote in the committees. But that's very different from leaving it.
If Mrs. May wins on Wednesday night, are there any circumstances to you in which no deal is better than a bad deal?
It's not possible to have no deal. If there's no deal, planes don't fly, we have 50-mile tailbacks at Dover, we may not have enough food in the shops and fuel in the pumps. Almost nobody, I don't even think you believe that absolutely no deal is possible, Nigel. There has to be a legal basis for continuing on. So that's not the issue. The issue is what type of deal is there. It's not
what I meant was, the worry that I have, is that we're wrapping ourselves up. We've kicked the can down the road, even if she wins. Let's take a couple of quick calls. Lord Adonis is here. He'd love to hear from you. Jeff is calling from Cardiff. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
What would you like to say to Andrew Adonis?
Well, firstly, I'd like to tell Mr. Adonis congratulations on what he's doing. I think he's doing a brilliant job. But Gordon Brown was on the Andrew Marr show this morning, and they were talking about this freedom of movement. Now, the EU has never had freedom of movement. There's a 3-month rule, and also there's a healthcare policy. So there's always been restrictions on movement. And what Gordon Brown was hinting at on the Andrew Marr show is that Macron, France, and other countries are already talking about making those restrictions tighter. Will we not be more sensible negotiating with the EU to stay in the EU, but to have tighter restrictions on this immigration?
Didn't we do that, Jeff? Isn't that the precise thing that David Cameron set out to do?
We didn't, because
and Mrs. Merkel and actually Mrs. Merkel vetoed it.
The 3-month rule, Nigel, was never implemented. Theresa May, they just left the doors open. We could have restricted people coming in, and we chose not to.
I'd love to have seen.
And those things could have.
I'd love to have seen Andrew Adonis's face if we were deporting EU citizens who after 12 weeks here had not found work, Andrew?
Jeff is completely right that we can do a lot within the EU, but to go to the heart of the issue, I think the public do want stricter immigration controls. In particular, they want to know who's in the country, which is a thing that came through to me very clearly from the referendum. Now, I was a member of a government 10 years ago that sought to introduce ID cards. I believe we should have ID cards like virtually every other European country, so we know who's in the country, who's not, who rightly has access to public services. My view is that we should have a proper law-based regime for managing immigration internally. We don't need to leave the EU to do it. Now, Nigel, do you support ID cards? Are you in favour of us actually knowing who's in the country properly?
I've never in the past supported them, but frankly, after the government that you were a part of led us to the position where there are now possibly 2 million illegal immigrants living in Britain, we almost have no alternative.
So we agree. We're forging agreement here in the LBC studio.
I'm afraid that your government left us in such a mess
whenever I come on
we may have to.
Whenever I come on Nigel's show, we actually reached, last time we nearly reached agreement on the second referendum. now we're reaching agreement on ID cards. Now, if we have ID cards, we don't need to do Brexit.
I think that Andrew Adonis has been driven slightly bonkers by Brexit, but you know something?
I think you always were,
having
Nigel,
him in the studio, and today is a shorter one than our last visit, but I want to thank Andrew for coming in. And I suppose one thing it does prove is that people with very strongly divergent opinions can at least do so in a very civilised way. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, and it's 10:45.
This is LBC.
Did you catch that?
Lovely.
Oh, yes.
Oh, darling.
Oh, my.
There are many, many, many ways to explore the robust yet cultivated regions of Bordeaux. But only one way to fly. Fly British Airways from Gatwick to Bordeaux from £33 each way based on a return fare. Availability and dates are limited. Conditions and booking fee may apply. cba.com/Gatwick for details.
Clear a desk, clear an office, clear a worksite, or clear a warehouse. With Clearabee, you can clear your work's rubbish quickly, easily and affordably. Choose our B-Bag skip bags, which can fit where skips can't and are suitable for day-to-day waste, specialist construction and more. Or let our man and van rubbish removal service clear it all for you. The choice is yours. Book now at clearabee.co.uk.
Clear rubbish easily. Clearabee.
Hello, sir. So you're interested in our Vivaro van with up to
4 years warranty?
Exactly. Plus up to 4
years servicing?
Right again. And 4 years 0% APR finance with Vauxhall Help to Buy.
Really?
Search Vauxhall Vivaro. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Conditional sale. 4 years 0% APR. Minimum 18% deposit plus VAT at 20% on total price. Financed by Vauxhall Finance subject to status. 18 plus. Business users only. T's and C's, mileage limitations and exclusions apply.
And we're back! Nick, you put in a solid performance last match, now you've gone and done it again! What's the secret?
The game was at a critical point and I was trying to get a drink at the bar without missing a second. I'd seen so many people use Visa contactless. I thought I'd give it a try, so I leaned over the crowd, gave it the old one tap.
Fantastic! You've joined the millions of people paying with Visa contactless every day. You want to enjoy every FIFA World Cup moment? We make sure you never miss a second. Pay the fast and easy way with Visa contactless. Bank terms and conditions apply.
Enjoy a taste of France this week at Lidl. Get a wheel of camembert for just £1.49, a pack of 4 mini gratins for £2.29, and 2 pots of creme brulee for only £1.49. That's ooh la la for ooh la less. Offer starts Thursday the 7th of June. Subject to availability, NMA vary, selected stores while stocks last.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, you've heard Lord Adonis, an open society, and they very much hope that the House of Commons on Tuesday accept the House of Lords amendments. They really do think the referendum was a terrible mistake and we need to have another vote. But the Prime Minister has told us Brexit means Brexit. But does it still mean Brexit? I'm not quite so sure. Joining me now is John Longworth with a very different point of view. He's the co-chair of Leave Means Leave and he was the former Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce, a post that he lost during the referendum campaign because he so strongly backed the Leave side. John, good morning.
Good morning.
Tell me, John, does Brexit still mean Brexit?
Well, it ought to. Unfortunately, of course, the government have handled the negotiations in an appalling way from the very beginning. No business person would ever go to a negotiating table without being prepared to walk away if they got a bad deal. And the government, from the very beginning, effectively gave the European Union control of the negotiations by simply saying we want a deal at any price. So we're now in a very difficult situation, but it's not too late. The government could still say to the European Union, we're actually going to leave in March 2019. There'll be no transition. We're going to go to World Trade Organization rules. We will prosper as a consequence of that, and we will give you no money. And very soon you'd see that the European Union will ask for a trade deal.
Now, what scares everybody, John, is... and by the way, she did say in the Lancaster House speech, no deal is better than a bad deal, but I rather agree with you. I don't think Barnier ever believed that was a possibility. But whenever no deal is talked about, and I just talked about it with Lord Adonis, we're told no deal means planes don't fly, that the trucks from Folkestone will be backed up to London, and that the country will fall off a cliff.
Well, that's Project Fear Mark 2. It's complete nonsense. The fact of the matter is that the majority of our trade at the moment operates under the World Trade Organization rules. So more trade, more exports that we send to the rest of the world operates under those rules than we send to the European Union. So there's already a mechanism for doing this. There's absolutely no reason why we should have trucks backing up at Dover because the European Union has to abide by the WTO rules. What it would mean, of course, is that there are some tariffs applied to those goods. But given that the currency valuation is now less than it was on referendum day, by a greater percentage than the tariffs, British goods will still be cheaper in Europe than they were on referendum day. So British manufacturing will do very well.
So why, John, if you put that argument, and I do understand, by the way, that, these container ships come into Southampton, come into Felixstowe, and it seems to me that they're loaded onto lorries and on the road, they've come from China within 10 minutes or whatever it is. Why is there this huge fear of trading under WTO rules? What's behind it?
Well, it's been generated, of course, by the Remain side, and not just within politics, but of course within Whitehall. There are many civil servants in Whitehall who are determined to make sure we maintain the status quo, that we stay as close to the European Union as possible, and actually see the whole exercise as damage limitation. And this is led very much by the Treasury and by Philip Hammond, the Chancellor. Instead of seizing the massive opportunities that Brexit provides, they simply want to see it as a damage limitation exercise. And this was what Boris was saying, wasn't it, the other night, when he basically said, look, that the Treasury is at the heart of Remain. Do you think Boris was right when he said that Trump might do a better job of this than Theresa May? Well, given that Trump is a businessman and he would approach it in a business-like way, he's got to be right about that, given also the way in which our Prime Minister has approached it so far. And she really needs to get tough with Barnier and the European Union in the next few months. She needs to set out the case that the UK is going to actually adopt world trade as a deal, that we will offer the EU a free trade deal if they wish to have it, and that we will pay them no money until we get that deal. Well, there's a lot of Brexiteers, John, would certainly like to see the Prime Minister take that position, but it looks unlikely. Now, assuming that she gets over the line on Tuesday and Wednesday, I mean, that's by no means certain, but assuming that she does, there are some now saying this morning, given the flexing of muscles by David Davis, Boris Johnson and some others last week, that there may well be a move post-Wednesday to oust Theresa May as leader. Do you think it would be a good idea for the Conservative Party right now to try and find a new leader? I think it's only likely to happen if the Prime Minister crosses some very serious red lines. I mean, if we're put in a position where we're effectively in Hotel Europa, we can check out but we can never leave, then I think, therefore, she will be in danger of being ousted, because she'll effectively have signed up to the worst possible deal of all, which is we will be a rule taker, but we'll have no say. We'll have to pay all the prices, but we'll have no say. We'd be in a worse place than we are now, wouldn't we, really? We would be in a worse place than we are now. We'd be in a worse place than we were before referendum day. Okay. So that would be, by definition, a bad deal. And therefore, the deal should either be voted down or we should seek a new leader. OK, John Longworth, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, John Longworth there from Leave Means Leave couldn't have been clearer. He says there's nothing to fear
from World Trade Organization rules that when we say no deal is better than a bad deal, we mean World Trade Organization rules. And Ian says, let's leave the customs union, leave the single market and watch the EU project implode. Well, Andrew Adonis seemed to think it's all going rather well over there. Hey, Daniel is joining me from Epsom. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning. I could tell you what, I've got a comment on Andrew Adonis because
Please.
I can't believe the temerity and the brass neck of the man. He was part of a government that oversaw mass uncontrolled immigration, right? From outside the EU. He also didn't cap any new EU member states. They introduced multiculturalism. I was quite happy. I didn't agree to lose my culture, but they brought in this idea of multiculturalism. When you look at politics, the left have a bigger price to pay because you see political cause and effect. Them doing that, I interviewed Phil Willis and he admitted that they wanted to rub the noses of the right.
And Phil Willis, of course, was an immigration minister under Tony Blair, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he admitted it. So they socially engineered the population of this country. They did it on purpose, and now the population have woken up with Brexit and UKIP and for where we are. And now people like Andrew Adonis have the temerity to come on and say, you know, you created it, Andrew.
And when I challenged him on it, he just sort of looked me blankly. I mean, it's as if they don't really ever accept responsibility for what happened during those Blair years. Now, Daniel, does Brexit still mean Brexit with the direction Mrs May's taking us in?
I think it does, and I think we will leave. I think we would have to leave, because if we didn't, we would have political chaos in this country. You know, this country was seen as a bastion of, you know, good politics for a long time, and I just think if we didn't leave, there would be absolute madness on the streets. So I think we would see a political revolution like we've never seen before.
And maybe Amber Rudd recognises that, Daniel, and that's why she's written a joint article today in the Sunday Telegraph with Ian Duncan-Smith.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the alternative, to be fair, when you look at the front bench of Labour, I mean, I think they're probably the worst Her Majesty's opposition in history. I think if you go down the line, you know, McDonnell and Corbyn haven't changed their opinions in 45, 50 years. You've got Diane Abbott, who's probably the worst MP in political history.
Well, I'm sure there's some a lot worse than Diane Abbott. But Daniel, you're confident we're still going to leave?
We have to leave, because I think if this country doesn't leave, we would have political chaos, and we'd never get back to normal.
Yep. Thank you, Daniel. No, thank you very much indeed for that. Morning, Nigel. Total mess our Prime Minister is making of this. Barnier is laughing at the UK. We need you, Nigel, to sort it all out. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I wish I could. Matthew is a first-time caller from Hammersmith. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Thanks for calling the show. So, were you a Brexit voter, Matthew?
I was. Well, I suppose I'm 30 years old. I don't know if that counts as a millennial, but I've been in favour of leaving the European Union since I was a teenager, really. Mm-hmm. So I'm truly committed to the cause, and I thought that it was actually going to happen. You know, I was very, very happy when the vote actually transpired in June 2016. But to be honest, Nigel, I've just become so depressed by the whole process that I think not only are we not going to get a Brexit, but clearly everybody voted for, and it's frankly disingenuous when people like Lord Adonis come on and say that the vote didn't suggest that we were to leave the customs union or to leave the single market.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Inherent in the vote. And I think it's really the contempt with which they treat people who have a different view from them, you know, the so-called liberal elite, who apparently are the tolerant, the bastion, the people who keep hold of tolerance in this country. But not only are we not going to get the Brexit that we voted for, it feels to me like we're going to be forced back into the European Union, and then it's all go for the federalist project. And, you know, we might as well just get ready to be a backwater of...
Can I ask you, Matthew?
Europe.
This is what fascinates me about, you know, a lot of people who voted Remain, well, a significant number of them actually just want the government to get on with it. But of those who are still committed to this European idea, they're feeling quite chipper at the moment because they can see the weakness of the British government's position. But what interests me is, if this does all go completely wrong, what does that make you, a committed Brexiteer, do? Does it make you just throw up your hands and say, the hell with it, I'll never vote again, I'll emigrate, I give up with it all? Or does it make you really, really angry for something big to happen?
I do know, as I say, I feel quite depressed at the moment, but I think long term, I'll get my mojo back and start campaigning for something better.
Okay, but for now you're feeling pretty down, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. It just feels like one kind of loss after another, really.
It's pretty tough. Matthew, thank you for picking up the phone and calling us. And I think there's a lot of people, I certainly met some in Cornwall last week, feeling a bit like Matthew, feeling a bit down about the whole thing. Well, I tell you what, this is such a big moment in British politics, with these key votes coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday, accusations that Leave.eu spent too much time talking to the Russians, that I've got no option but to continue this conversation into the next hour. I've got texts, I've got tweets, I've got phone calls, I've got Facebook messages. Does Brexit still mean Brexit? Is the Prime Minister going to win this key vote on Tuesday and Wednesday evening? Are we still leaving the European Union at 11 p.m. on March the 29th next year? I think so, I hope so, I pray so, but who knows?
On your radio, on your phone, and here.
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, Kim Jong-un has arrived in Singapore ahead of his summit with Donald Trump on Tuesday. The president says his historic meeting is a one-shot attempt at brokering peace in the region. James Crabtree is an associate fellow at Chatham House, specialising in Asia affairs. He says the two men could find some common ground.
They're both aggressive, they're both idiosyncratic, they both like to break the rules, they're both a little bit overweight, they both are distrusted to some degree by those in the kind of the rest of the international community. So I think it's possible they could form a sort of bond.
It's as Mr. Trump's withdrawn his support for a joint statement made by leaders at the end of the G7 summit. It follows deeply divided talks in Canada marked by disagreements over trade tariffs. He's accused Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of being dishonest and weak and has warned allies retaliation against newly introduced metal tariffs would be a mistake. Senior Tories are warning the government could fall if their colleagues rebel on Brexit legislation. The government EU withdrawal bill returns to the Commons on Tuesday, when MPs will vote on 15 amendments from the House of Lords. Ian Duncan-Smith and Amber Rudd, from both sides of the referendum campaign, say the party can't afford to become divided. Speaking on LBC, Housing Minister Dominic Raab couldn't be drawn on whether there's a plan B if the amendments do pass.
Even if we lost one or other vote, I don't think it would scupper the whole process. What it would do is make it more complicated, it might introduce some delays, and that's why it should focus everyone's minds. If you want to put the country first, you vote with the government to get this legislation through, and I think that's what we'll see.
London's mayor will meet the Home Secretary tomorrow to discuss a spike in violent crime in the capital. It's after a man in his 30s was killed in a stabbing in North London last night. Officers were called to Turnpike Lane before 10 o'clock to begin their 74th murder inquiry in the capital this year. A century of women having the vote is being celebrated in the UK's capitals this afternoon. Thousands will march through Edinburgh, London, Cardiff and Belfast dressed in suffragette colours. Organiser Helen Marriage says they want to create a living artwork.
We decided that we would create these living seas of colour in the colours of the suffragette flag, which was green, white and violet. And women taking part today in the 4 devolved capitals of the UK will be part of creating a sort of human banner that makes its way through the streets.
Buckingham Palace says Prince Philip is celebrating his 97th birthday today privately. As planned, the Duke of Edinburgh wasn't at the Queen's official birthday celebrations yesterday. LBC weather, most places warm and sunny today. Some heavy showers in Scotland, Northern Ireland and the West Country, a high of 26 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watts.
Bye, Dad. I'm taking the car.
Hold on, just wait there.
What? But that's our garage.
What's your name?
I just want to get my dad's car out of the garage.
Your name?
Annabelle.
Annabelle. No, your name's not down. You're not coming in.
Who says?
The management. Your parents.
Dad!
Esso Synergy Supreme Plus fuels. Our best ever protection for your engine. Perfect for people who care about their car as much as we do. Claims based on current versus previous Esso Synergy Supreme Plus formulations. See esso.co.uk for details.
LBC Travel in the centre of town. Whitehall is due to reopen shortly after it was closed for a wreath-laying event. However, Abingdon Street and Millbank remain closed between Parliament Square and Lambeth Bridge ahead of the 100 Years Votes for Women march. As a result, it's very slow still on Victoria Embankment in both directions between Westminster Bridge and Embankment Station. Balham High Road stays closed in both directions near Balham Station because of an accident causing delays, and there are delays on the A40 eastbound approaching Gypsy Corner. That's because a lane is currently closed for roadworks taking place. LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, Tuesday is set to be a really big day because Aaron Banks, the founder of Leave.eu, is going to appear before a parliamentary committee, the DCMS, Department of Culture, Media and Sport Committee, to be confronted by members of Parliament, particularly over accusations that have appeared in the newspapers today and many other things, some of which I know to be unfair and untrue. And knowing Banks, as I do, and also understanding that what gets said, of course, inside a parliamentary committee is under parliamentary privilege and it's no holds barred. That promises to be explosive viewing. And then, of course, in the evening, we move on to the government's EU withdrawal bill and to some really crucial amendments, which, if lost, could well see the end of Mrs May as Prime Minister. There are some that think even if she wins, she could go as leader. I do not believe that in that scenario. But there's something else happening on Tuesday we haven't yet talked about. Of course, it concerns the Donald, who is always in our news, who briefly popped in to the G7 meeting and then popped out again. And he has landed, as has Kim Jong-un, in Singapore. We'll talk about that a bit over the course of the next hour. But we've had guests on in the first hour and not enough time for you. So I want to know from you, the LBC listeners, texters, tweeters and Facebookers, I want to know what you think. Nigel, Adonis has absolutely no idea how the working class think. All the political ping pong goes over most people's heads. They voted to leave the EU, nothing else. End of, says Steve in Croydon. And Frank says, Brexit never meant anything to begin with. There was absolutely no plan behind it. So I suppose, yes, Brexit does still mean Brexit, if you mean it's just vacuous-sounding words. Well, the worry, Frank, is that the vacuous-sounding words are the ones that came from the Prime Minister, because it was just a jolly good slogan, wasn't it, on which to fight a general election. Wayne says the simple answer to resolve the Irish border issue, let Ireland reunify and let the South have Northern Ireland. Well, I tell you what, Wayne, I think you might just get a bit of a reaction. And what's really interesting about this is, this impression that Brexit is dividing up the United Kingdom. We hear it again and again and again, and I remember William Hague using it as an argument in the last days of the referendum. Recent opinion poll in Northern Ireland showed that only 21% want a united Ireland. So support for that almost at all-time lows, because, of course, they know that if they were to join the Republic, it would mean joining the Euro, and people don't want to do that. Does Brexit still mean Brexit? Is she going to win this vote? Are we leaving on March the 29th? And even if we do, what kind of Brexit is it? Is it the one we voted for? I'm not so sure it is. Mark is calling from Coventry. Good morning, Mark.
Yes, good morning, Nigel.
So, what do you think, Mark? Does Brexit still mean Brexit?
Oh, well, I think it does. I think Theresa May will deliver. I think the Conservative Party will deliver. What we'll see this week in terms of the Commons vote on the latest sort of version of the withdrawal bill is they will unite. And let's face it, if they don't, it'll be utter chaos. And I think I need to remind you of something you said to me, actually, a couple of years ago. I'm an ex-UKIPper, I'm afraid, Nigel. I've gone off to the blue team because I think the blue team are the ones that are going to deliver. And something you said to me, which I think was actually very valid, was you said at the time, this is about 2 or 3 years ago, and this was just before pre-referendum, that you thought there would be a referendum, but you said that it doesn't matter who's negotiating, who comes up with the goods, as it were, or tries to get the deal, that actually the reality is the 27, or 26 as it was when you were talking to me, that the other 27 countries will not let us go. And I think you have a point, and I think that's what will happen. We will see Theresa May deliver. We will say, put something on the table to Europe, and they will say, no, you're not leaving. I think the worst is yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I'm pleased I said that to you because it's almost as if Barnier is, and he's doing a much better job of the negotiations than May is, but ultimately he's trying to make it impossible for us, isn't he?
I think so. I think that's what years ago always sort of inspired me to get involved in this whole sort of process of in terms of local elections and national elections, be it UKIP or be it now Conservatives, that's where I am, is actually saying to people on the doorsteps, look, you need to think about this issue. You need to think about the issues in terms of how your life
So logically, Mark, just thinking this through, logically then, if they are going to play silly bees and not cooperate with us and try to do their best not to come to a grown-up deal of any kind at all, then surely John Longworth, the co-chair of Leave Means Leave, is right. Surely we're getting very close to the moment where the Prime Minister says, look, we'd love to have a sensible free trade deal with you, but actually it looks impossible. So do you know what? On March the 29th next year, we're leaving on WTO rules. Isn't it now time, Mark, for the leader of your party to do that?
I don't know, because I still think we haven't got to that point yet. I think I think she's doing the right thing. I think there are the people I've met in the Conservative Party. There are some lovely, healthy Brexiteers, Nigel. Let me assure you of that. They really are, and I think there is a willingness in terms of David Davis and his team, wherever's doing the negotiating. Obviously, I don't know who is in terms of the actual members, but I think there is a willingness to see this through. But I think it is a possible scenario that this may crash, and we may crash out with no deal.
Yep. Well, let's hope, Mark, let's hope that the government are making proper preparations for that. And I wonder whether there are many civil servants who would willingly help them do it. Mark, thank you very much indeed for your call. On Twitter, I get, sorry, Nigel, the 17.4 million had different reasons. It was a binary decision that in no way dealt with the complexities of leaving the structures of the European Union. We must look at what's best for UK PLC. It was always going to be about money, says Philip. No, Philip, not everything in life is about GDP figures. Actually, this was about democracy. It was about governing our own country. It was about making our own relationships across the rest of the world. And it was about controlling our own borders and making our own decisions and leaving, in my view, the failing structures of the European Union. And everybody on the other side tries to put this in terms of what we will lose economically. And they are, Philip, the same people who told us the ERM would be good for Britain back in the 90s. It was a catastrophe. They're the same people who told us if we didn't join the euro, we'd be sunk. Wrong, and they're wrong again, in my opinion. Stephen is calling from Peterborough. Good morning, Stephen.
Morning, Nigel. How are you?
Well, I'm all right. I mean, I'm sort of sitting here. My nails are bitten down, I'm hoping that... isn't it odd? I've never supported anything Theresa May's ever done. She's a Remainer. She's a career politician. And yet, I wanted to win these votes on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I voted to Remain, and I was just on the side of the Remain. It wasn't huge. But since the way that the European Union has treated us, I want to leave. And I believe that the British can do whatever the British need to do to make it brilliant. But I think if she loses Tuesday, she loses her mandate. She loses quite a lot of the goodwill that she may have with some of the Remainer Conservatives, and I think she has to go back to the population.
Not another one, Stephen.
Yeah, I do, honestly, because what's she going to do if she loses it? How's she going to negotiate with those guys in Europe? We haven't got anybody with a stiff backbone who's going to go to them and say, look, this is what we're going to do. If you don't like it, we'll walk away with our 39 billion. You don't like us in Galileo, we'll take away our 1.9 billion for that. You don't want us in your European army, great. We'll turn around and look at... Nobody's willing to do that. Everybody has got a very fluid spine. They need some Churchillian spine to actually turn around and get us where we need to get to.
The funny thing is, Stephen, with all of this, despite the Cabinet being at war with each other, and quite honestly, some of those comments from Boris in other times would have led to the sacking, I think, of the Foreign Secretary. And despite all of this, and all of the weakness of the Prime Minister, they're still, according to today's opinion polls, 7% ahead of Labour. So maybe, if they reach an impasse, I said here, Stephen, about 5 weeks ago, that I thought it was possible that another general election could happen in the autumn of this year, and I still think it's possible. And maybe, if she fought that election, she'd get a clear majority. I don't know.
Do you think they're allowing Boris to say things that Theresa May can't say?
It's a very good question. I think the answer's no. I just think I think David Cameron once said, well, Boris will be Boris. Boris is Boris. Boris just goes on saying, and I have to say, for Boris to say, oh, really, this is all so awful. I thought I was speaking, under Chatham House rules. I thought when you're the Foreign Secretary addressing 25 people at a dinner and the wine's flowing, don't think what you say is going to be in private. I just, Stephen, he must have known those comments would get out. I genuinely think he'd like to be Prime Minister above absolutely everything else.
Well, he's a single-minded person. Boris will do what I think Boris wants to do when Boris wants to do it, and.
So, Stephen, basically, what I find fascinating about your call is I think there are quite a lot of people like you that, frankly, the way Barnier and Verhofstadt have behaved, they've been venomous towards us, haven't they?
Well, from my point of view, when you turn around and say, I'm going to teach the British public a lesson, we're going to not be nice to them, because all they're doing, if you look at it, is every time they can take a swipe, they're taking a swipe.
Yep.
Their best tactic would have been to be really nice and polite, and because we can't handle that very well but if somebody wants to have a go at us, we love it. It puts the back up against the wall.
I think you're right, Stephen. Thank you for your call. And Stephen, appalled by the way the European Union have handled this and has shifted his vote round the other way. And there are some that have gone from leave to remain. Overall, there's still a majority. There is absolutely still a majority for leaving over remaining. And if they force this to a second referendum, my own view is whatever threats they put upon us, you would see the fair-mindedness of the British people come through, and we'd reject EU membership by an even bigger margin. I hope it doesn't come to that. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC, and it's now 11:15.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
The person I happened to be speaking to at the time was giving the impression that all the terror the world faces is Islamic, and it is not. Why do you hear that as me apologising for Islamist terror?
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
We are in one of the greatest battles in history.
Oscar winner Gary Oldman gives the performance of the year.
How many men will survive?
You have courage, Miss Layton. Courage.
Critics agree Darkest Hour is a triumph and truly magnificent.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight in the streets.
This film must be seen.
We shall never surrender.
Darkest Hour, out now on 4K, Blu-ray and DVD at HMV while stocks last.
When you need more space.
Think creatively. What could you use a log cabin for? A studio? A home office? A den for the kids? Creative Living will design and build a log cabin to suit your needs, even taking care of electricity and climate control. See for yourself at our 3 large cabin display villages in Surrey. Find out where at creativelivingcabins.co.uk.
Your own log cabin, handcrafted. The creative living way.
In the latest part exchange deal from Renault, you'll now get the car's value plus an extra £1,000. Wow, plus an extra £1,000 off any Renault Clio or Renault Captur. Available with all other offers. My goodness.
Okay, Sarah, that was great. Let's do one more. Where'd she go?
Value your car at Renault.co.uk/trade-in. Trade-in car must be registered to customer for minimum 90 days before new purchase. Order by 2nd July and register by 30th September 2018. Retail customers and participating dealers only. T's and C's apply.
At Boots Opticians, we're here to help you discover a stylish new look for less. We've got thousands of frames to choose from, so speak to us and together we'll find the perfect pair for you. In fact, with 2 pairs from £75, why stop at just 1? Book in store or at boots.com. Boots, let's feel good. 2 for £75 on Boots £50 glasses as part of our half-price additional pairs offer. Both pairs must be bought for the same customer in the same transaction, subject to availability. See in store.
The last thing you need in London is more stuff. The London Storage Vaults are in an underground vault near Oxford Circus. It's self-storage that's convenient, climate-controlled and completely safe. Ideal for everything from sports equipment, stock, furniture or artwork, with free collection from Zones 1 and 2. There's 24/7 access and prices start from just £10 a week.
London Storage Vaults, the future of self-storage. Visit londonstoragevaults.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Did you catch that?
Lovely.
Oh, yes.
Oh, darling.
Oh, my.
There are many, many, many ways to explore the robust yet cultivated regions of Bordeaux. But only one way to fly.
Fly British Airways from Gatwick to Bordeaux from £33 each way based on a return fare. Availability and dates are limited. Conditions and booking fee may apply. cba.com/Gatwick for details.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
So the G7 met over the weekend, or as some now call it, the G6 plus one. The plus one being the United States of America. And so these 7 countries meet. But of course, Mr. Juncker and Mr. Tusk from the European Union, they turn up as well, and they stand at the end of the photographic lineup. Trump arrived late. He left early. He surprised them all by saying, stop criticising me on tariffs on steel and aluminium, as he would have said. Look at the fact that you have put so many tariffs on American products. He then made the extraordinary statement, why don't we have a free trade deal completely between the G7 members, to which answer there came none. But there was a joint communique to be issued at the end, didn't say very much. And then Justin Trudeau gave a press conference, and Trump said, PM Justin Trudeau of Canada acted so meek and mild during our meetings, only to give a news conference after I left saying US tariffs were kind of insulting and we will not be pushed around. Very dishonest and weak. Our tariffs are in response to his of 270% on dairy products, and he withdrew from the communique. 2 takeouts from this. That's Trump. You try and push him around, he's always going to kick back hard. 2 takeouts from this. The G7, or the 6, perhaps not as united as they'd like to let you think, because the new Italian Prime Minister Conte was there, clearly very friendly with Donald Trump, and Trump saying that the red carpet is being rolled out in Washington for the Italian Premier, and Trump praising Italian voters for going in the direction they have. And then there's the relationship between Donald Trump and Theresa May. Now, I thought with Brexit and Trump happening back in 2016 that there was a chance here for the Atlantic to get quite a lot narrower. It has not done so. In fact, it may even be marginally wider when the president says that she's a schoolmistress, and when he talks about other leaders in his closing speech, name-checked everybody and didn't even name-check her. So relations between Trump and May really pretty poor. But now he's off in Singapore. He's got a day's preparation, as indeed has Kim Jong-un, who's landed there as well. And they've got the big conference that's going to be happening on Tuesday. And what can I say? I've no idea what may come of it. I do think the very fact Trump has managed to get the North Koreans to the negotiating table is in itself a victory. Maybe the North Koreans see it the same way. Maybe they see themselves having a bigger role on the world stage. I've no idea what will come of it, but I think all of us should wish both of them well. Anything that makes North Korea less of a threat would be a good thing. I don't know whether it's achievable, but that's kind of what Trump wants to do. He wants to sit down and talk to people. He even suggested that Russia was readmitted and it became the G8. Not that that went down very well at the weekend. Back to Brexit. Are we leaving on March the 29th next year at 11 p.m? Well, how this vote goes on Tuesday will, to some extent, determine that, particularly if, Parliament had the ability to reject the deal at the end of the process and to send the British government back to the negotiating table. If we got to that, we wouldn't be leaving. I think the Conservatives will unite around this, and party unity being what it is, because for most people in politics, career and party mean far more than country and principle, whichever side of any argument you're on. I suspect that we are headed towards Brexit, but one that has been kicked down the road for many, many years, and one that is so weak that it may actually leave us in some ways in a worse position for some years to come than we are now. Let's go to James, who's calling from Spitalfields. Good morning, James.
Oh, hi, Nigel. It's good to speak to you again. I've just been, I like history, and I've been thinking about this. Now, when the Irish Free State was established, It wasn't what the Irish people, the Irish nationalists wanted straight away, right? They had to negotiate a dreadful deal with the UK under a terrible situation, and it seems to me that the situation that we're in is mainly down to parliamentary arithmetic and the fact that the MPs don't reflect the actual opinion of people in the referendum. And there's a small group of Brexiteers in the Conservative Party and an even smaller group of Brexiteers in the Labour Party. And if the Conservative Party was to fall and then there was to be a Labour government, to perish the thought, then we would be in an even worse situation than we are now. So what I was thinking was, let's suppose that this government, using Article 50, leaves the European Union and ends up signing up to some awful supine deal, which is a soft Brexit situation.
Yeah.
But then a future government, maybe the next Conservative government or something else, was just to unilaterally withdraw from that arrangement.
Well, I think, James, and I get what you're saying here, this is why actually leaving the European treaties at 11 p.m. on March the 29th is so crucial. Because even if thereafter we're locked into a rubbish series of deals, once we're a sovereign state, we can change anything.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. And so when the Irish Free State did it...
Listen, I think that's a very good point. We may get a very, very unsatisfactory Brexit, but we do need to get Brexit on March 29th next year. But my sense is that the Lord Adonises and the Blairs and the Nick Cleggs and others will move heaven and earth to try and stop that from happening.
They will, yeah, I agree.
James, good point. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's go to Adam, who's calling from Madrid in Spain. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Nigel, from a very cloudy and rainy Madrid.
Oh, well, bad luck. Actually, it's good afternoon there, isn't it? But hey, nonetheless. So are we headed for Brexit, Adam? I mean, where are we going?
Well, the view here in Spain is that Brexit is a joke and you're never going to leave.
Is it?
Yeah, because they read what they read in the press is that Theresa May has once again reached a compromise. Theresa May has once again rolled over and had her belly tickled.
Difficult to disagree. A bit difficult, Adam, to disagree with the Spanish press on that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the sad thing is about this is that if we've already seen that if you tell the EU to get lost, they cave in. Remember what happened with the Canadian deal 2 years ago?
Go on.
They'd been 7 years negotiating that deal. And in October 2016, the Canadian negotiator walked out of the meeting in Brussels and held a press conference where she spoke in French, and she said, she was almost in tears. She said, "You can't deal with these people."
I know, I remember.
Canada's an open democracy, a generous country that, we like to hug trees. And they've told every step of the way. And in the end, the deal nearly fell through because the Walloon farmers didn't like it. So the Canadians said, "Goodbye, au revoir."
That's right.
And they walked away.
It was the Walloon farmers, wasn't it? That's absolutely right.
But guess what? A week later, they had a deal.
So call their bluff, Adam. Is that the answer?
Absolutely. And they will cave in because we have a very, very strong hand to play.
Yeah.
The four freedoms are a load of rubbish because the main one that would benefit the UK, which is services, there is no freedom of services in the EU, except in the UK.
Do you know, whenever anyone tells me that the European Union is I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury saying it's the greatest thing that's happened since Christ arrived a couple of thousand years ago, basically. And what none of them say, of course, is...
Well, he got crucified, didn't he?
Well, a lot of people who stand up for their principles do, in lots of different ways. But what's so interesting is the way the Catalans have been treated. People put in prison, the chief of police now up on charges. Adam, the way the Spanish and the European Union have treated the Catalans tells me it's not somewhere we ought to be.
No, and the Catalans, you can agree with the way they're behaving or not. It's quite a complex story from here, which you don't get to see in the UK. But their big hope was Europe. Here in Spain, people don't distinguish between EU and Europe. For them, Europe means Brussels. That Europe will protect us. Europe will...
Yeah, well, and that's a bit the post...
Europe means democracy.
It's the post-Franco mentality, isn't it? Yeah. But the Catalan separatists look at it very differently. Adam, thank you very much indeed for your call. Nigel, if the UK is unable to negotiate trade deals outside the EU... or control immigration at the end of these negotiations, then Brexit would have failed. Paul from Oxford. Paul, yes, and could I just add, Paul, the European Court of Justice still having continued jurisdiction over this country. And this is what David Davis got panicky about last week. How open-ended are these commitments? Is transition? Could it perhaps go on forever? It's one of the reasons why I'm totally opposed to the concept of transition at all. Ashley is a first-time caller from Caxton. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
So how do you feel, Ashley?
I'm pretty dismayed this morning.
Are you?
I campaigned with you back in 2014 for the European elections.
Yep.
I then campaigned with Peter Reeves and Patrick O'Flynn for us to get a referendum.
Yes.
We won that. I then campaigned for Leave.
Uh-huh.
We won that.
Uh-huh.
I was a counting agent at each one of those votes.
Yep.
I've done everything by the book that I thought was going to get us out of the EU. And I've sat back since 2016 and I've just watched everything get diluted, get changed. People that didn't want us to leave the EU have jumped on the bandwagon and now they want us to have their style of leaving the EU. And for me, it's all so distasteful. It's just so wrong. We should have a Leave Prime Minister leading us out of the EU.
Well, of course we should.
Not all this negotiations about how long we stay in the customs union and let's have a backstop on Northern Ireland and all the rest of it.
And let's opt back into the EU Medicines Agency and everything else. It's really odd, actually, isn't it? It's really odd, isn't it? Because the last 30 years we tried to opt out of things in the EU, and now we're trying to opt back into them.
Yeah, exactly. When I voted Leave, when I went campaigning for Leave, for me that meant leaving the EU. As far as I'm concerned, I was expecting it to happen in 2018.
Yeah.
That suddenly got extended to March 19.
I know.
Which is disgusting on its own. And now we're talking about being in some customs union till 21. Like, is this actually going to happen? What I went out and campaigned for and voted for, is this actually going to happen?
If the worst came to the worst, Ashley, and if the Lord Adonis's got their way, I don't believe they will, but if they got, but it's a risk. If they got their way and forced us to have a second referendum, would you feel dejected and stay at home, or angry and be back out there?
I'll be angry and out there even worse. There'll be more blisters on my feet.
Ashley, thank you very much indeed. And I do wonder sometimes, whether Adonis realises just how angry people would be. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. Time for the news now with Thomas Watts.
Donald Trump is due to arrive in Singapore this afternoon, where North Korea's leader landed this morning. The president described his summit with Kim Jong-un this week as a one-time shot to deliver peace. It's as Mr. Trump's pulled out of a joint G7 summit statement after accusing Canada's Prime Minister of being dishonest and weak. It follows a weekend of deeply divided talks in Canada, marked by disagreements over trade tariffs. Senior Tories are warning the government could fall if their colleagues rebel on Brexit legislation. The government's EU withdrawal bill returns to the Commons on Tuesday, when MPs will vote on 15 amendments from the House of Lords. LBC weather: most places warm and sunny today, but some heavy showers in Scotland, Northern Ireland and the West Country, a high of 26 degrees.
LBC travel on the M25. There are delays anti-clockwise approaching the Dartford Tunnel because of an accident. The right-hand tunnel has been closed. In the centre of town, Abingdon Street and Millbank are shut between Parliament Square and Lambeth Bridge. That's ahead of the 100 Years Votes for Women march. In Colnbrook, the A4 Colnbrook bypass has been shut in both directions between London Road and Lakeside Road because of an accident. And there are delays on the A40 eastbound approaching Gypsy Corner. That's because the lane is closed for roadworks. On the trains, Chiltern Railways have no services to or from Marylebone. LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler.
This is LBC.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell, and the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team, who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct, with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to soul.
Every child in London is breathing toxic air, mainly caused by road vehicles. To help tackle this, the ultra-low emission zone is coming to central London for petrol and diesel vehicles. It will operate 24 hours a day, every day of the year, from the 8th of April 2019, in addition to the weekday congestion charge. Search ULEZ to check your vehicle meets the emission standards and to plan your options. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Barbecue season is here. Time to get outside and cook up a feast with your family and friends. This summer, make your life easier and take away the hassle of lighting your barbecue with a Weber chimney starter. Simply pour charcoal into the chimney starter, place it on top of lit firelighters and, well, that's it. Your charcoal will be ready to cook on in no time. Lighting your barbecue has never been easier. Now you can get a chimney starter for free when you buy select Weber barbecues at participating retailers. Offer valid until the 1st of July. More info at weber.com.
Your data matters to the NHS. Information about your health and care helps us improve your individual care, plan your local services, and research new treatments. The strict rules about how this data can and cannot be used have been strengthened. We're committed to keeping your information safe and being clear about how it is used. You can choose whether your confidential patient information is used for research and planning. To find out more, search Your NHS Data Matters. This has been brought to you in association with the Information Commissioner's Office.
With new BT Plus, you'll get our best connection whether you're using our fastest fibre speeds at home or extra 4G speed with double mobile data when you're out and about. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you won't miss a beat. New BT Plus, fibre and 4G together. Our best connection in and out the home. BT, be there.
Keep connected promise, extra speed 4G and double data on BT Mobile. Speed varies by location, coverage and demand.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, I've been pretty critical of the honours system over the last couple of years. It seems to be almost only for Remainers who get peerages and knighthoods and all the rest of it. But there was one particular award this year, an MBE, that I thought was really, really well-deserved. In fact, rather wonderful, because Britain's longest-serving poppy seller is going to get the MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours. She's 103-year-old Rosemary Powell, and she plans to retire from selling poppies later this year after 97 years of collecting for the appeal. And this all sort of first came to light on Remembrance Sunday last year. And I was doing a show and I'd interviewed some veterans from World War II right through to the Gulf War. And I asked people, what does Remembrance Day mean to you? And so it was November last year. And I took this phone call from Giles from West Drayton. Giles is calling from West Drayton. What does it mean to you, Giles?
Well, a significant amount. My mother was born during the beginning of the First World War and lost both her godparents, godfathers, very, very quickly. Most of her uncles and a lot of her cousins. And so the very first day poppies were ever sold, she and her mother were selling them on Twickenham Bridge in 1921.
That was 21, was it, Giles?
Yes, they didn't sell them immediately after the war. 1921 was when they first started selling them.
Yes.
They were actually made, they were silk poppies the very first year.
Yep.
And my mother was left on her own, aged 6 3/4, and her mother went off to get some crepe paper because they were selling out like hotcakes. And they raised an enormous amount of money that first year.
Yep.
Significantly more than they ever expected.
And did she go on, Giles, selling poppies through her life?
She's still selling them this week.
What?
And, she's still alive and still
hang on. I'm trying to do the arithmetic here, Giles. So how old is your mum?
She's going to be 103 on the 1st of January.
103. So she's out there at 102 selling poppies, and she's been out there since 90.
Not every single year. There's a few gaps, but still selling them.
Giles, have you been in touch with the Royal British Legion about this?
She's in the book. They did a 90th anniversary celebration book.
Right.
Towards the back of that book, she gets 2 pages.
Wow.
And it's photographed when she was a little bit older than when she was actually selling poppies, because we didn't have a photograph of when she was selling poppies.
She must be, Giles. She must be the only person alive who was selling
as far as we
poppies,
know.
Poppies on the first official. Because I know that after 1918 there were some sort of unofficial poppies that people made. But you said 1921 is when it formally starts. She must be the only person alive doing it. Goodness gracious me!
As far as we know, yes.
Yeah.
The British Legion invited her to the Remembrance Service quite a few years ago now.
Yes.
And she was invited to 10 Downing Street as a thank you on the 90th year.
Wow.
Which is, 7 years ago now, I think.
That is.
But they haven't capitalised. They haven't capitalised on her very much.
Well, I find it bizarre.
Because she's not an official poppy seller signed up to the British Legion. She's just.
Well, I tell you what, Giles.
Collect a tray. And,
I tell you what, Giles. We'll make sure because I've played some interviews already. I've got more to come, but we'll make sure, Giles, next year that LBC does a proper, long, in-depth interview with her to find out exactly what the mood in Britain was like back in 1921 when poppies were being sold, and when memories must have been very, very, very raw indeed. Giles, amazing phone call. Please give our absolute best to Rosemary. Well, wasn't that a truly incredible story? Well, it rather blew me away, I have to say. The 1921 bit, I got all that, and she's still selling them this year. I couldn't quite believe it. Well, I'm pleased to say, joining me on the line for the second time is Giles from West Drayton. Good morning, Giles.
Hello, I'm currently in the nursing home with my mother, so we've just come out of church.
Yes.
And the priest gave a lovely eulogy saying, well done getting your MBE, but also flagged up that it's the 70th anniversary of the NHS.
Yes.
And my mother was a nurse during the war. She had trained as a nightingale. I think she's the oldest nightingale, and was a nurse before the NHS started, and one of a few remaining nurses from pre-NHS days. And she'd got a few good memories from being a nurse, in addition to selling poppies.
Yes, and I have to say, when you said to me last year that the British Legion, etc., were not really capitalising on her, I thought, well, this is extraordinary, that something ought to be done. And here she is now being appointed with an MBE, isn't? I mean, how was that news received?
From them, yes. They contacted my mother for an interview, which was published in the papers at the beginning of June, just a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
As they were starting to recruit for new volunteers, and the whole point of their putting it in the papers was to say, look, some of our volunteers are getting on a bit. This is an example of Rosemary, who is 103, and she's going to do it for the last time this coming November, and then give up because she's just a little bit too old to traipse around trying to sell poppies. We need younger people to take over. So their campaign of a couple of weeks ago was to try and flag up that they need new volunteers.
Yes.
Quite a lot of the people who've been selling poppies are getting on a bit.
Yeah.
We will put out a request to get new volunteers to sell poppies in her stead.
Giles, can you please congratulate her on the award of the MBE?
Well, yes. She can hear you now.
Can she? Very good. Well, Rosemary...
Just her hearing is very faint.
OK, well, Rosemary, many congratulations on the MBE, and I know you're not going to be out selling poppies this year, but you deserve...
This year, she can.
She can this year. Oh, she's out of retirement. Rosemary, 103-year-old Rosemary is out of retirement, and she'll be out selling them this year.
No, this was announced as this will be the last year she's going to sell them. But some of the journalists, in their way they like to tweak and misquote slightly. So the original article was saying she's expecting to do a day or two this year.
Right, fine. Well, I will come, Giles. We'll be in touch, and wherever she's collecting, I will come along and buy a poppy from her. Many, many congratulations, and we'll speak again. Well, isn't that wonderful? And just sometimes the honours system does award people who are thoroughly deserving, and it's a Sunday morning, and a lot of Brexiteers need something that's a little bit cheerful, because a lot of you are very worried and very, very down indeed. I wonder how Simon in Basingstoke is feeling this morning. Good morning, Simon. Does Brexit still mean Brexit?
I don't think so, Nigel. In fact, I know I always had my doubts, especially after Theresa May demonstrated her total inability to manage anything at all, really, something she ably demonstrated as Home Secretary, as the current increase in violent crime indicates. But the reason I'm calling you is because I have a greater concern than just the fact that we won't leave. I think by the fact that we don't leave the EU, after the largest democratic mandate the people of this country have given our political class, the political class is jeopardising our very system of government. If representatives don't represent the views of their people, especially when they hand over the authority, as Parliament did, to the people for the referendum, then what validity do they have to occupy the roles that they do have at the moment?
Well, Simon, I think it would lead to the biggest breakdown in trust and confidence in our entire democratic and governmental system that there's been in modern times. Of that I've no doubt. The thing I can't quite work out, Simon, is whether that would lead to just large-scale apathy, the hell with it, we're never going to bother again, or whether it would mobilise some kind of anger, perhaps the likes of which we've not seen.
I think we have seen that anger. We saw it after a Tunisian man set himself on fire because he was no longer allowed to carry out his trade, and it led to the Arab Spring. And I think that we potentially won't just see this anger in the UK, because the way the UK government is behaving is to a large extent not that different from other nations in Europe. There's a lot of anger about mass migration and the fact that that's not been dealt with. There's a lot of economic anger because of the failure of the euro, and that is largely being ignored, not just by the political classes in the respective countries, but also by the mainstream media. And where there is a party that does stand and objects to the current course we're all on, they've been immensely successful.
I mean, the difference is, Simon, that the rest of... Well, France is different, but nearly every other European country has a system of proportional representation. We have a first-past-the-post system. I know all about this, having won a national election in the Europeans of 14, and then 4 million votes for virtually nothing in 15. And that's the problem. That is the problem. Maybe we'll see a new party. Simon, I don't know. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
The Sunday Times has alleged hidden Kremlin links to Arron Banks, the biggest donor to the Brexit campaign. Is this a political witch hunt or a legitimate investigation?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
Here's a true story from Aldermartin, Baines and Cuthbert. In January 2015, fire tore through a residential development in London with potentially serious physical and financial risk for the residents and owners. Fortunately, an ABC representative was quickly on site and made sure all the residents were transported safely to a paid-for hotel and given all the assistance they needed. No fuss, no hassle. For block management, ABC Estates will give your story an ending that'll make you as happy as Larry. Find out more at abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
We've got it at Selco. Selco, it's where the trade go.
Looking for a wide range of plasterboard? Well, Selco's got it. Want to know that it's in stock? Selco's got it. Want trade prices too? Yep, Selco's got it. A massive range and huge stocks of specialist and performance plasterboards, all at great trade prices. Selco's got it. See selcobw.com to find your nearest branch. Got it?
We've got it at Selco. Selco, it's where the trade go.
Enjoy a taste of France this week at Lidl. Get a wheel of camembert for just $1.49, a pack of 4 mini gratins for $2.29, and 2 pots of creme brulee for only $1.49. That's ooh la la for ooh la less. Offer starts Thursday the 7th of June. Subject to availability, and may vary selected stores while stocks last.
Choosing your new ride and about to get your car finance from the dealership? Hold up. Before you take their offer, compare car finance deals at Confused.com and you could save over £1,000. Now let's try that again. Choosing your new ride? Visit Confused.com/car finance and you could save over £1,000 versus the dealer. Representative APR 5.9%. Based on £9,000 hire purchase loan on a £10,000 car. With a £1,000 deposit and repayment over 48 months. Credit subject to status. Visit confused.com/car finance for verification.
The last thing you need in London is more stuff. The London storage vaults are in an underground vault near Oxford Circus. It's self-storage that's convenient, climate-controlled and completely safe. Ideal for everything from sports equipment, stock, furniture or artwork, with free collection from Zones 1 and 2. There's 24/7 access and prices start from just £10 a week.
London Storage Vaults, the future of self-storage. Visit londonstoragevaults.com. Terms and conditions apply.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
It's a big week for Brexit. Big votes on Tuesday and Wednesday coming up in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister's position very much on the line. And a lot of people asking, does Brexit still mean Brexit? Tell me, are you a Remainer who's feeling a bit cheerier than before? Are you a Brexiteer in the depths of depression? What is going on out there? Michael is calling from Mansfield. Good morning, Michael.
Hi, good morning, Nigel. Yeah, I'd just like to say, what's becoming quite clear is that kind of, phrase, Brexit means Brexit. No one actually understood what Brexit meant in the first place.
Didn't they? Didn't they?
Absolutely, Nigel, because I don't remember people talking about the customs union, that there's no solution in Northern Ireland. I don't remember people talking about the impact on trade. You yourself have just said
Well, there is an impact on trade, Michael. There is an impact on trade. You're right. Actually, we can now open ourselves up, Michael, to the 85% of the global economy that's not in the Eurozone.
Which we're doing now, Nigel.
Michael.
So again, that's a fatuous argument. You've got to start being honest with people. I mean, look what the motor industry is saying quite recently. In fact, this will be disastrous if we're not in the single market.
Oh yeah, of course it will. Oh yeah. No, Michael. Michael, the same people said not joining the euro would be a catastrophe. The City of London would close down. The car makers would all go. Michael, these.
I don't think they did, Nigel.
Oh, I tell you what, they also said the ERM was good. Michael, the point is this. You and I can argue economics all day long and disagree. But actually, nobody ever knows who's right and who's wrong on this. What I do know is those saying it'll be a catastrophe were those that got it wrong over the euro and ERM. But this was a political decision. It was a decision based on, do we wish to be a sovereign nation state that makes its own laws or part of a bigger political union? Isn't that what the referendum was actually all about?
I mean, again, you're trying to misrepresent things. We are a sovereign nation state, Nigel.
Well, how can you be sovereign?
Within the EU.
No. Michael, how can you be sovereign when somebody else's court overrules you?
Let me just finish here. I think it's absolutely ironic, right, that you've got the goal to suggest that we're not sovereign, right, within the EU, and yet you're the very people complaining because it's happening. If the House of Parliament rejects it, because they are representatives, that's the House of Parliament doing its job. And I was just listening to your earlier call. How dare you, right, suggest that somehow, if the Parliament does its job, that somehow the people should start going into the streets. They should be.
Who said that?
You were doing that, Nigel, earlier.
Oh, I must have been. You must have been listening to a different radio show,
we
Michael.
live in a democracy. Sorry.
Yeah, but the point about democracy is that occasionally we subcontract those. Well, every 5 years we have an election, right? And occasionally you have a referendum. Michael, sovereignty rests with the people. They lend that authority to people in Parliament for up to 5 years.
Absolutely, and they represent us, Nigel. They represent us, and clearly things have changed. The mood of the people has changed. But to try and imply this is an overwhelming majority, it was a marginal vote anyway.
I didn't. No, I mean, Michael, all I'm implying is that in recent opinion polls, 70% say just get on with it, please, government.
Yeah, I can see the frustration there, but just going back to that earlier point, though, I think it's outrageous that you should imply that you're implying, almost encouraging, really, people to start protesting.
I mean, if I'd wanted,
Margie, you did that 5 minutes ago.
No, I'm asking a question: will Brexiteers, if we don't leave, just give up and emigrate, or will they get angry? Will we see political change and new political movements in this country? That is the question I've been asking people. And I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer. What I did say, Michael, if you've been listening intently, I said that I met people in Cornwall this week who just said, if this doesn't happen, we'll never vote again. So I've met people who would just walk away from democracy completely, and I'm fascinated by what the response would be. I think there would be a significant number who would be very, very angry. And do you know something? I would do my absolute best to make sure that they did not behave as some people behaved yesterday in Whitehall, where, bottles got thrown at police and various things. I've never advocated street violence, Michael, or anything like that. I've always thought we need to sort this out by democratic means. But, Michael, what gets me is when you say that people who voted Brexit didn't really understand it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It became, and I'll tell you why, because people like you, right, simplified it. I remember that disgusting poster you stood in front of.
No, it wasn't a poster. It was a photograph, Michael.
A photograph.
The truth.
Let's not split hairs here, shall we?
Well, I think actually it's quite important.
Germany.
Yeah, I think it's quite important. There is a big difference between a photograph.
Let me finish. You asked me the question, and let me finish, okay? Yeah, okay. Let's call it a photograph then. But the point for the message was very clear. We're being overwhelmed by immigration. You stood in front of that long line, and it was totally and utterly misleading. If you're promoting a product, you'd have been done by the advertising agency for misleading people.
Really?
And so for you to say, absolutely, and so for you to say people didn't misunderstand, the entire discussion practically through the Brexit campaign was about immigration.
One thing, Michael, I got wrong.
And I wonder who was paying for it.
One thing, Michael, I got wrong, and I'll admit this, I did get it wrong. I did predict that we'd have up to 250,000 Romanians living in Britain. I'm wrong. The latest official figures are 411,000. So I've always underestimated absolutely everything. I've never, ever exaggerated stuff. I've generally been too low in my projections. Michael, do you think Brexit's going to happen?
I certainly hope not.
OK. So what would you like to see? A second referendum? Or, how would this happen?
Absolutely. I want to see a second referendum. Now the facts are becoming clear. Now also, when you look at the referendum itself, who exactly paid for it? I was reading the Times and the Observer this morning. Some very serious questions need to be answered there, didn't there? You were obviously involved in that with your friend Adam.
No question about funding. There were no questions, Michael, about funding at all. None whatsoever. There were questions about relationships and there were questions about...
Have you read the papers this morning?
I've read them cover to cover. And there were questions about and there were questions about proposed business deals. No questions about funding, Michael, of any kind at all.
I see. Well, we'll see what the select committee says this week, won't we?
Well, I tell you what. Tuesday, that select committee is going to be absolutely fascinating. Thank you. One last caller this morning, and it's Herbie from Harrow. Good morning, Herbie.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Here we go again. Why are we pandering to these bully boys of Europe, the unelected commissioners that are running circles around us, demanding we do this, demanding we do that? All they want is our money to pay the Remainers who have got interest in the EU, make sure they got their pension and their pocket money and everything else that goes with it. Why are we pandering to them? They're the bullies of Europe.
Well, I suppose Theresa May would say that in any negotiation there is a bit of give and take.
There's no give and take with these buffoons. They are absolutely bullies. They don't listen, they don't care. As I said, Nigel, all they're interested is the money we pay them to make sure they keep their pension, their salaries, their lifestyle, and everybody else suffers. And look at the way Europe's collapsing. Slowly but surely it's collapsing. That's all I can say.
We've offered Theresa May said that our parting gift will be about 40 billion sterling.
Okay.
Do you think it's time she put that back on the table, Herbie, and said, look,
no,
unless you start...
No, nothing.
Give them nothing, no?
No, look, we do not need to implement Article 50. As you know, Gerard Batten has been campaigning for the Article 72 or whatever it is that goes way back. We do not need to pay a penny. We can walk away and leave them with it. Let them take us to court. What are they going to get from us? Nothing.
But Herbie...
We haven't got nothing. All we're paying from borrowed money already.
But wasn't it right that the British government should at least have gone into negotiations to begin with and tried, and maybe still should try, to find an amicable solution?
They've tried, Nigel, and they keep on changing the goalpost every time. Barnier does not want to listen. I think he's got earmuffs on when we go in there to talk to him. I think he's listening to classical music or something.
Well, I went to meet him earlier in the year, and I thought, we're not going to do a deal with this guy. Herbie says walk away. Thank you. I squeeze in one last caller. John, a first-time caller from Islington. Hi, John.
Good morning, Nigel.
Does Brexit mean Brexit?
I'm afraid not. Mrs. May, if you look at the record, she's not working for us. She's working for the EU.
Is she?
She's working with them, and we're sunk.
So, do you mean that she is deceiving the nation, John? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's my opinion, yes.
So she's still a Remainer at heart. But John, if we don't leave on March the 29th next year, she is toast as Prime Minister.
Well, she's achieved her object, which is to stay in the EU, so she's not going to be worried about that. And I don't think there's anyone in her party who's strong enough to oppose her.
All right, well, John, thank you. Well, John, feeling very downbeat, thinks we've absolutely been led up the garden path. I'm a bit more optimistic than that. I think she will win these votes on Tuesday. I still think Brexit is on track. I still think leaving the treaties will happen, although what kind of Brexit it'll be, different question. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and I'm back tomorrow evening. Going to be a hell of a week this week. At 3 this afternoon, it's Andrew Castle, but up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, many gang members are aged between 15 and 25 and live with their parents, often single mothers. Now, a police commander is suggesting that one way to stop urban violence is to threaten their families with eviction. Evicting entire families for the crimes of one member? A bit draconian, no? Before that, under Putin's regime, Russia has been resurgent across southern